Welcome to the Center for Grateful Leadership January 2021 Thank Heavens webinar. I'm sure we're all breathing or have already breathed a sigh of relief to say goodbye to 2020. And I have to say there were some good things about it. We can all find some of the gold in the heap there, but it was a tough year for just about everyone. And we have been rethinking some of the things we've been doing at the Center for Grateful Leadership since June 14th, which happens to be my birthday, 2016. So we're in our 5th year, and we've decided to make some changes. And Roxy, if you could just go back to that change slide so people can keep those in mind. We basically have decided, first of all, that the Zoom platform is much more flexible and adaptable to our needs and to all the people who come and go during these webinars or watch it afterwards. It's just much easier for everybody. We don't have the audio problems we had with the previous platform. So we're glad to welcome you to that if you're new, and say, oh, thank heavens, we're on an easier platform for everybody else. Okay, if you could be kind enough to just mute yourselves if you're not speaking. Every person can just press the mute button in the left-hand corner of your screen. We've also decided to have these monthly meetings, which we've done since 2016, become bi-monthly, which is every other month. It could actually mean twice a month, but they're both in the dictionary. But we're going by the every other month definition. And that's for a couple of reasons. And I'm going to be very transparent with those of you who know the platform and the offerings well, and those who are brand new. But we tend to get a small but extremely dedicated and faithful audience. And we're delighted to have every one of you who shows up, and then people watch the recorded webinar afterwards. But for the amount of effort that we all put in here, the contributors, Roxy certainly does amazing things to get this ready. I work hard to get the right speakers and to go over their presentations with them and make sure it will fit their needs, our needs, and most of all, your needs. And then we also are going to start, as you could see, right on time at 1 o'clock. And we're going to do some of the member contributions first, rather than have our guest speaker first, waiting for people to straggle. And we lost a good 15 minutes. It's no one's fault. We are all multitasking. And it's very hard to keep everything straight and going, and meeting our needs for self-development, for some amazing things we can do for and with others once we embrace the power of acknowledgement and grateful leadership. And so the format is also changing that way. And at the end, we're going to stay on today at 2 o'clock. We're going to keep going for anybody who wants to remain, to propose something new, to argue with what we're doing, to tell us we got it all wrong, we got it right. We love your feedback. And one of the suggestions from our wonderful contributing member, Harry Waldron, is that we change the timing from an hour to 90 minutes. And in the last half hour, we have real discussion about a particular topic related to grateful leadership. So that's something we'll discuss afterwards. Okay, so I also want to, moving on to the next slide, we want to talk about, if we can see it, it's called hashtag 365 days of acknowledgement. And Roxy was cute. She said, I dared to create a new international holiday. Well, actually, I said that myself in my LinkedIn post because I just took the opportunity to say, okay, the day after Thanksgiving every year, we're going to start 365 days of acknowledgement, where every day we acknowledge somebody and we show our appreciation to them. and we let them know that they are of value to us and we care about them. And it could be anybody from, you know, the person delivering mail to your grandchild, to your spouse, whoever it is, it doesn't matter, certainly a colleague. We're all needing appreciation, acknowledgement, and letting ourselves know that we are seen and that we exist in these times, in every time, but these times especially. And my Excel guru husband tells me that this is day 46 of the 365 days of acknowledgement. Hashtag 365 days of acknowledgement. So please participate with us. We would really, really love that. Okay, moving on. We are going to talk about one thing further before the actual presentation, which is the monthly contributors. And these are the backbone of the Center for Grateful Leadership. I have to say, Harry and Don and Roxy and Jim Trella was the one who started the Art of Grateful Leadership podcasts. He did them for 3 years in a row, once a week, every week. And I always say this, I don't know how he did it. It's so hard. It's so challenging. I quickly cut it back to every other week because it was just too much for me to take on. So thank you, Jim. And he was one of the backbone contributors. So Harry Waldron for years has been contributing a monthly acrostic. And Roxy, if we can show Harry's acrostic. I just love these because somehow they're always new and they're fresh. And this is Grateful Beginnings. And if you know what an acrostic is, they're just charming. If you could just scroll down, this is a New Year's theme. What are we going to do? So you can see grateful and beginnings. And I don't know, anybody like to read a couple of these? Anybody feeling poetic today? I would ask Harry, but he always tells me what Myers-Briggs ratio he is, and I don't know the numbers, but he doesn't like to, unless Harry, do you want to surprise me and read some of the first couple of lines? You don't have to.
I can try, Judy.
Yay, Harry. Go ahead, just read grateful.
Well, one of the things I think for 2021 is that we have to treat each other better than we did in 2020 to make it a better world and that type of thing. But gratitude and acknowledgement can help us meet the challenges of 2021. And acknowledgement and appreciation can carry us through difficult times. So those are what those letters, I tried to pick a theme that would make for a better New Year's day, I guess, ahead. And, folks can read through that. We published that in our CGL website. And that's all I'll briefly say because we have so much to cover today.
Well, thank you for stepping out there, Harry. He's always a behind the scenes amazing contributor, and I can turn to him for anything at any time, and no matter how busy he is, he'll do something. And it's really just wonderful. Okay, so thank you, Harry. And somebody has a mic open. If you would just check if yours is the one so we don't get any echo. That would be great. And I see an adorable combination of looks like mother and child here. Is that Hillary? Who is that? I'm seeing a photo popping up on my screen. It's Hillary. I bet it's Hillary. Yes.
What?
Yeah.
What picture?
Oh, you just popped up on my screen with your son.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't know where that's coming from. Yeah, I'm eating lunch, so my video is off, but I'm here.
Okay. All right. Roxy, are you able to give me a hand with the microphones? Because we're having some big feedback issues echoing. Okay, so let's go now to Don Officer. Don, we're delighted to have you here. And yes. I always say that your column is called The Gratitude Connection, and you connect grateful leadership to thought leaders and books and initiatives that I would never even think about. I mean, people ask me, can I speak about grateful leadership and this topic or that? I said, I could talk about grateful leadership and spaghetti if you want me to. But you, Don, do the really high level version of grateful leadership and spaghetti. You really make it an amazing contribution. So tell us about this month's article. I'm so excited. I read this article and I had to go out and buy the book. I just ordered it online. I should have it by tomorrow. It just sounds so fantastic. So give us a summary of the book. This is part 2 of your fabulous series. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Well, thank you, Judy, appreciate that. Yeah, I'd recommend this book to anybody, by the way, so I'm going to take down the particulars right now. It's put out by the, what do you call it now? The Center for the Greater Good, which, as you can imagine, has a lot in common. It's quite synchronized with our operation as well. They've been going for, probably a little longer than us, but not that much. They've been going since about 2007 or something like that. And they have this project, the Gratitude Project, going now since 2014. So it's been going for quite a while. Most of their editors at the Greater Good Center have in fact contributed to this. I think they were pulled into it. So I'm looking right now to find out who should be our contact point there. And I've got some really good ideas, and I'll be getting back to you on that, Judy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, essentially in this particular post, talked about the first 2 parts of the book, in which they talk about, first of all, the origins and then the impact of gratitude. And they looked at the origins from many perspectives, like, well, what is the biological origin? What is the origins as an individual? What is your development in your own thought patterns? What is it socially speaking? How do you become more grateful or learn what gratitude is? And it occurs to me that it's a subject that really raises your curiosity. And that's what I liked about the book, because it made me even more curious. And that's what keeps you energized too, you know? You could just say a few bland things that would cover half a page about gratitude and say, well, that's it. But then you're going to get a little tired. That'll get a little old after a while. But it's not like that. It's a very rich emotion, a very rich subject, and quite complex. It's not complex to do it, okay, or to have it, but it's complex to understand it in all its detail, but not in a bad way. This is not a hard read at all. The other thing that I did in this piece was because, in fact, there were references. The New York Times did some work on the New Year's resolutions. And how do those tie into? So, well, it turns out, and some of the writers that I've reviewed in the past, like Kelly McGonigal, for example, or David Bisteno, had some really good comments to make about that. And essentially, it's really hard to be grateful for the future or to look forward to the future if you aren't grateful for something in what's already happened. Because you want to carry something on, you want to bring something forward, you want to change some things. But if you're just sort of starting out bald or flat, that's very hard to do. Yeah. Because you've got a blank slate and you have, kind of resolution blockage.
A little RB, right, John?
Yeah. So that's essentially what the piece is about. I hope you read it and I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you follow up by checking out The Well, which is the, how should I put it? It's an email blast. It's a kind of an e-zine type thing that they send out, and you can get it through the Times, and of course they're available online. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell, and I enjoyed doing it, and I hope you enjoy reading it.
That's wonderful, Don. Maybe if you in the chat you could just list that link for The Well. I wasn't aware of that, and I'd like to sign up for that myself.
Right.
So if you can, otherwise.
Yeah, I think I
we
can.
give-
I'll go back to the source. And
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much for your ongoing contributions. And we're even talking about putting all of Don's contributions into book form one day. So
hey,
thank you. Yeah, really a wealth of, a wealth of fabulous information. Okay, so now we have another wonderful contributor, Roxy Nevin, who does our Grateful Parenting column, which I wish we had all had when we were raising our children. And my daughter is here today, so I will say I could have learned a few things. But Roxy, would you like to just say a few words about your upcoming article?
Yes, sorry about that. Oh, one sec. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
So yeah, like I said, we have a new activity in our family. We've started basketball, and what I didn't know before we started was that when you start sports, it's not just a casual, thing that you do sometimes. It's a whole lifestyle. And the more into it the child is, of course, the more it affects the family. And so we have become a basketball family, and it's been a learning curve. And we've had a lot of examples of what we, to see what we are grateful for along the way, and have kind of been able to come together as a family and learn this new process for us. And so it's just like the article is not finished. It will be up this week on gratefulleadership.com, but basically just about our new adventure.
That's wonderful, Roxy. Thanks for doing those. This is another potential book in the making, I'm sure of it. Okay, so now we're just going to play the very beginning of my podcast that I did this 2 weeks ago. And I want to share it with you because it's a theme that I really, really believe in dramatically. And that is that we are all bringers of the light with this initiative. And, if you see the way people's faces light up when they receive your acknowledgement, you know what I'm talking about. And we have had people share on this CGL platform at a webinar and some writings, how an acknowledgement actually saved 2 lives that I know of. And then there's also a wonderful video called the Acknowledgement Impact movie. I don't remember the exact name of it, or how to get to it, but that's also, it's in my free course, in my Power of Acknowledgement course. It's part of IPM Day 2020, which is still in the access period. So I show that film in the course, and it's just a life was saved. So Roxy, if you could play just the first couple of minutes of that, and then we'll go on to our guest speaker and have a wonderful presentation.
Whistles that can go with recognition programs. An acknowledgement is the light. How you can change the life and change the world.
Roxy, I'm sorry. Is this one Bringers of the Light? I just want to make sure. And did it start at the beginning? Yeah, celebrate is what I want to start with. Okay. Yep. Thank you.
We celebrate holidays like We celebrate holidays like Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa in the darkest time of the year, and each festivity focuses, at least in part, on bringing light into the darkness. We who practice and share grateful leadership and embrace the hashtag 365 days of acknowledgement and choose to make it a daily practice are light bearers. And I'm grateful to each and every one of you who chooses to walk this path with our global community.
So that kind of summarized what I was thinking about this week and the weeks before as well, which is our capability of bringing light into the darkness. And there's a beautiful book called Bringers of the Light How You Can Change Your Life and Change the World by Neil Donald Walsh, that really, really addresses this and speaks to it. It's so deep and meaningful, and I think it's like all of 50 pages long. Let's see, it is something like, whoops, oh, it's actually 74. It goes by in a minute, though. You can read it in 20 minutes. And it really is about identifying yourself as a bringer of the light because you picked up that book, and your desire to change your life and change the world manifests through tools like this book that I just referenced, and by your joining the Center for Grateful Leadership or taking a course or listening to a podcast like you're doing right now. And I want to thank you for stepping into the light and being willing to pass it on to others. I see that anybody who has been exposed to the message of grateful leadership or the power of acknowledgement has a tool, many tools, to access when they feel a little bit funny or embarrassed or awkward about acknowledging others, which is the most natural and simple thing to do in the world. And I would never say forget about recognition programs with gift cards and all the fancy bells and whistles that can go with recognition programs. An acknowledgement is free. It's simple. It's easy. If we can reach into ourselves and just deliver it, even if it feels a bit embarrassing. I had an experience of this 2 weeks ago, actually.
We can stop that now.
I'm temporarily
Yeah.
living in my
Roxy,
weekend
can
home
you
in
stop it?
Pennsylvania in a tiny little
Called. Okay, thank you. I go on to tell just a very adorable story about a shopkeeper who insisted on paying the difference for something I wanted to buy. I didn't have enough cash. I didn't have my credit card. She was 16 years old and she was working part-time and she wanted to pay $2 for the difference. And I said, no, I'll come back, or they'll trust me to owe them $2. She insisted, and I kept resisting it. And it just brought forth to me how hard it is sometimes to just accept an acknowledgement. And I believe Ms. Roxy Nevin and I are going to be doing a podcast about that in the near future, because I still have an acknowledgement for her that she has not taken advantage of receiving yet. It's in my on-demand course, folks. If you all want to go to it, The Power of Acknowledgement. But we're going to talk about what stops us from accepting acknowledgement easily, generously. And Roxy's not alone. I was that way. I would not take those $2 for the longest time. But then I learned that I had to take my own advice. But anyway, and then I acknowledge everybody who's a contributor to this initiative in that podcast, as well as people who are certified, Grateful Leadership certified professionals, levels 1 and 2, and our advisory board consisting of 12 people. Everybody is acknowledged and appreciated. So please do listen to that podcast, Bringers of the Light. Okay, and before I introduce the guest, who's waiting in our wings very eagerly, and I'm eagerly waiting to hear her, I just want to say hello to Dr. Stephen Weber. I saw you're here, Stephen, and he wrote me just a friendly email about, I don't know, a month or so ago, and he said, I just came across an article you wrote in 2014. It was an ATD publication that I'd written 5 different articles about the 5 C's of acknowledgement. And he said, I really would like a copy of that poster that you had offered then. Is it still available? Well, Stephen Weber, you want to say a quick hello and tell our friends here what we're talking about now?
I appreciate the opportunity to join today. This is my first time. I'm
great
associate superintendent in Fayetteville Public Schools in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I was just speaking with Judy by phone, and she said that there was an opportunity to participate with business leaders and other grateful leaders and entrepreneurs. So this is new for me, but I do enjoy getting outside of education because quite often our meetings are everyone who does the same thing. So I'm thankful for the opportunity, and I look forward to learning from each of your leadership experiences.
That's just great. And did I see Dr. Campbell there also? Is she here? Is that your Dr. Campbell, who is the Director of Learning and Development, I think, for Fayetteville Schools? I thought I saw her.
I don't know if she's on today or not. I haven't seen the
Okay,
full
well, give
view.
her my regards. So,
Okay.
Anyway, thank you so much, and for absorbing it and wanting to try out our course and see if that perhaps it could work in the K through 12 system, which would be delightful. Okay, well, thank you very much. And now I want to have the great honor of introducing our speaker today, our very wonderful speaker, whom I met, I think she said it was 9 years ago at a TMI Global Congress. And we just connected and we had a great short conversation, the way you do sometimes at a conference. And that could have been the end of it. But as she said, as Leigh Stevens said, we have stayed together through space and time. And I'm so delighted to have you here, Leigh. I knew Leigh when she was Director of Risk and Delivery Management at Microsoft. And now she's a certified meditation teacher and senior program manager, Prime 8 Consulting. And I love the way she's put mindfulness together with grateful leadership in the presentation to come. Leigh, take it and tell us a little bit more about yourself and what brought that transition about. That is so unusual. And thank you for being here.
Great. Thank you, Judy. I'm honored and humbled to be here and in and amongst all of you, very esteemed and accomplished people. So I have had all this career in technology and consulting spanning, as you can see on the screen there, 25 years, and lived in different countries, traveled all around the world, worked in different locations all around the world. And the always thinking into the next moment, planning, organizing, worrying, and being several steps ahead of myself meant that I never necessarily celebrated the present moment. I certainly celebrated, but what was it that was eluding me several years on into a international career that was very fulfilling on many levels, and yet there was a gap somewhere. There was a critical need that arose in me to say, I'm not actually feeling fulfilled. And it took me on an exploration of all kinds of different faiths and philosophies and traditions and practices. And I landed on meditation and mindfulness through my teacher and mentor, David G., who studied with Deepak Chopra and worked at the Chopra Center for 10 years. And the voyage of discovery, if you like, really was an inner voyage. And instead of seeking all of the external ambitions and gratifications, it really was an inward journey. And there, I learned a lot about the science of mindfulness and meditation, adopted a practice of my own, and as you can see on the screen here, making better choices now in my life, and feeling like there's a lot more that I can shift in my life as opposed to just waiting for things to happen or having a reactionary knee-jerk response to things that happen that we have no control over. So Judy, would you like me to go ahead and start?
Yes, you're going to share your screen with us. And I just think it's a fascinating journey, Leigh. Maybe someday it will be a book. I'm always thinking books.
Indeed. Well, and so I don't stop in the corporate area, and in fact, I'm so grateful to Stephanie for being on the call. Friends, old and new.
I'm afraid Leigh is frozen. Roxy, anything we can do about
An
that?
honor to be asked to speak. Okay. Are you able to hear me all right?
Now we can, yes.
Good. Okay. There was a message that said internet unstable, and there are things that we can't control. So I will have about 25 minutes here and see if we can fit some Q&A. And if people have questions or comments, please go ahead and put it in the chat and I'll address as I'm able to throughout the presentation. So mindful, grateful leadership and cultivating present awareness. And let me just make sure I've got this. Okay, we're gonna talk a little bit about the context and impacts. And Dawn, as you were speaking about the gratitude project, I was so excited to learn about that and looking forward to reading that too. And you cited Emmons, who is a premier gratitude researcher. In preparing for this presentation, I didn't even know there were gratitude researchers. So I've learned a lot about mindful researchers and research about meditation, but not gratitude researchers. So it's really glorious to see the scientific community coming into these spaces. So we're going to talk a bit about that, and then what is really the connection between mindfulness and grateful leadership. How do I practice mindfulness? Share a bit of science along the way, and then do a couple of practices on things that hopefully maybe resonate with you or at least encourage you to explore. So where did mindfulness come from? Is it a modern day thing? Is it just the buzzword of the current generation? Actually, no. Mindfulness has been around for thousands of years, part of different ancient traditions, philosophies, and practices. For example, Buddhism and Hinduism, but certainly not exclusive to those two. However, it was brought to the West in a more science-based way, and and there are many, but one of the key influencers is John Kabat-Zinn, who's at University of Massachusetts Medical Center and the founder of the stress reduction clinic there in the Massachusetts Medical Center. And he, if you like, brought it more to the fore in the 1970s and was the founder of MBSR, Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, which is an 8-week program and has gone on since 1979 from strength to strength. And it's a program that's helped those suffering from anxiety, depression, pain, and so on. And it is one of the ways. We don't have to go through an 8-week program to feel the benefits of mindfulness, by the way. But this is just one of the ways in which the scientific and medical community really gathered around this concept of mindfulness. We also see it in the corporate space. So I'm based in Seattle. Microsoft is here. I used to work for Microsoft for 8 years. And that sense of mindfulness is now being brought in on the corporate agenda. Microsoft brought in a mindfulness pioneer as part of their learning and development organization. And he believes in personal transformation, which then can lead to the ever broader concentric circles that in fact, Dr. Al Zaitun talked about in October's CGL webinar around me, my team, my organization, and the world. My mentor and teacher, David G, always talks about we transform the world by transforming ourselves. And of course, in the gratitude space as well, it's if we're not able to receive gratitude and if we're not practicing gratitude with ourselves as individuals, then it's less natural and less of a practice for us to be able to share that with others. The other areas that mindfulness is showing up is with our police and military. Blue Courage as a project. Really, mindfulness is one of the tools they use in order to support and help train police around the country in the US. And Mindful Warrior Project is with veterans. So we see it coming up in different places. There are different events as well. Wisdom 2.0 in San Francisco, not in person this last year. And of course, apps, Headspace, Insight Timer, Calm, and Chopra, to name a few. Interestingly, through my sister who lives in LA County, last year with COVID, Headspace teamed up with the LA County's Department of Public Health and gave all residents of LA County free access to Headspace for all of 2020. And I thought that very fascinating because it means that mindfulness is moving from something that maybe heretofore was woo-woo, but now is more part of the acknowledgement of our mental health and public health. Okay, and I thought I saw something come down in the chat, so I'm just going to see that for a moment. Yes, great, Hillary. Glad you like a bit of the historical context, and I could go on, but this isn't a history tour. This is this morning we're doing wanting to really understand why are we even talking about this here at CGL. So many of you are veterans here of CGL and know so much more about gratitude than I do. However, for those who haven't been exposed to the Center for Grateful Leadership and Judy's book, Grateful Leadership, Judy talks about the 5 C's of acknowledgement. And the first C is consciousness. So I'll read the excerpt from her book. Become conscious of the acknowledgements and gratitude that you already have in your mind and spirit. They really are already there. And when I read this for the several time, it so hit me that that is absolutely the intersection of mindfulness and gratitude. The interesting thing is, and Judy talks about it at length, that we're not always in touch with that. We may not have the courage, which is the third C of acknowledgement, to acknowledge, and that we may not even recognize when it arises in us. And the other thing, like I loved the metaphor, like tropical fish in a fish tank that Judy writes about. Acknowledgement can be going on the screen and the background of our mind, but we may not grab it and run with it and really deliver it. Mindfulness is exactly that, in terms of, wow, I had this arise in me, and it really does come from the heart. It's our innate nature around goodness and connectedness. And now, wow, okay, I really want to deliver this gratitude and demonstrate that. But how do you get in touch with that? Because as human beings, we have this discursive, endless thinking, planning, worrying mind. So when we are very self-involved, we don't often take the time and take that moment. And mindfulness is a tool, one of, that can help us get centered around that and realize what we're experiencing and feeling. And then move on to number 2, the second C of acknowledgement, which is choice, and make that choice to actually deliver acknowledgement. I want to speak very briefly this thing that prevents us from getting in touch with ourselves, and sort of tapping into what our innate nature is. What Judy describes here is that we already have in our mind and spirit, is described very well by Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote this book, The 4 Agreements. And he talks about this concept, domestication. And domestication is really around all the conditioning that we've been exposed to all the way throughout our lives, particularly when in our formative years, the punishment and reward, the acceptance, the rejection, the code of conduct or belief systems that we've been exposed to in community, family, school, and so on. And this concept around domestication is that we have our own modes of behavior in our rule book, essentially, for ourselves, so firmly entrenched that we don't even recognize what they are. So it's this, in order to be able to get in touch with what is this gratitude and acknowledgement that we already have within us, we need to be able to find a gap, to find a moment, even if it's a few seconds, to be able to access that. And how we do that, one of the ways, is through mindfulness and getting present, and appreciating each moment, choosing miracle over grievance as well. Miracles can be something that maybe happen a handful of times in a lifetime. I choose to look at miracles as something that happen every day. For example, a miracle is that I woke up this morning, I'm breathing, I'm healthy, and I have a glorious cup of tea next to me. So those are miracles as I see them. And when we're in that space, then we're much better able to deliver gratitude and acknowledgement to others. And to put the 5 C's here into perspective for those of you who may not have heard about this. So Judy talks about consciousness, choice, courage, communication, and commitment. Those are the 5 C's, and mindfulness flows through all of those. So moving on to the third one about courage. So cœur is the root of courage. It means heart in French. And it does take enormous courage to deliver acknowledgement and gratitude. And the reason why is because we're so stuck in our ways of conditioning of, nope, I've got other things to do, or nope, oh my gosh, you know, how will that be received? I'll be embarrassed, or the person will be embarrassed. So really bringing that awareness and consciousness and kind of getting out of our heads and leading more with the heart around, no, this is going to connect us, and this is going to have a ripple, the likes of which we actually can't ever really know. And so that's really the power of showing up for ourselves and others courageously. And then communication and commitment. I mean, that is about conscious communication and the commitment, which again, the commitment made in one's heart, as opposed to, no, this is just part of a good leadership checklist. And the science. So Dawn alluded to that before in talking about the Gratitude Project. There's enormous science behind the effects of gratitude and in turn also mindfulness.
I'm sure Leigh's connection will be restored in a moment. We can all do a little meditation while we're waiting.
Mindful meditation.
Well, I think we had a little breakdown in Leigh's signal, but let's, anybody have anything that they would like to share about what they've heard so far? Just, you can raise your hand. Let's see. I think we should see that on the screen if you raise your hand by going to.
Okay, I'm back.
You're back? Oh, great. Okay.
So not exactly sure why that happened, but I think I'll take that as a sign from the universe to move on. So
we didn't do it. We didn't do it.
No, I know. So in gratitude circles, the research is well known in terms of the effect on our emotional and well-being. It is the similar effect with mindfulness. And so I really want to underscore that, gratitude allows us to find meaning, and where there is meaning, there is hope and resilience. So what is a mindfulness practice? So I've talked a bit about mindfulness, but what is it really? It is awareness and consciousness. So John Kabat-Zinn defines mindfulness as awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And non-judgmentally is really important because when we're judging, we're not present. We're that's our thinking mind. And so it doesn't mean we don't have judgments. We are humans. We will always have judgments, but it's what we choose to do with those, and whether we choose to say, no, I don't need to have that dialogue right now. Let me be present. So, and the subtitle of this presentation around cultivating a present moment awareness, it is a process. It's a skill that we can actually cultivate. This isn't, something that is only given to certain people in our lifetime. No, we can all do it. And think of it really as brain, training for the brain. And there are many ways to practice mindfulness. So I have this Mindfulness on the Go book, which the author of which is listed on the slide, and it gives many examples. Let me give you one: tapping into our 5 senses. So for example, brushing your teeth in the morning. Instead of when you brush your teeth, of thinking, okay, great, now I've got to feed the dog and I've got to get to this meeting, or I've got to get out and run an errand, and oh my gosh, I forgot that. Why not be present and practice? And again, you may not do this every single day, but it's one of a way in which you can say, let me listen to the brush. What am I tasting? I've recently started using activated charcoal toothpaste, and it's got a different taste. It's an experience for me. What about the smell? The light shining on the mirror, my face in the mirror. And again, this isn't going into deep analysis while you're doing it, but just being aware of what you're doing. And gratitude practice. So gratitude practice, I mentioned before, it can take the form of journaling. It can take the form of first thing in the morning or in the evening saying, what are the 2, 3, 4, or 5 things I'm grateful for? And allowing 20 seconds for each of those things that you're grateful for to wash through and move through your body, because it can change your physiology in that way. Stillness and silence. So I'm talking a little bit about meditation and mindfulness. They're very overlapping and interconnected. Stillness and silence, and there are many different ways to practice meditation as well: visual, chanting, mantra, stillness and silence, for example. Sometimes it's nice just to sit still, and me being really active and tending to be pretty energetic most times, have a very hard time sitting still. And yet it feels like a vacation when I do, because I say, time out, I'm going to rest here. And then practicing our attention and giving a pattern interrupt. So indulge me, let's play along a little bit here together if you like. And you can do this with your eyes open or closed. It's 16 seconds to clarity, as David G called it. And when Roxy and I were preparing for this on Tuesday, doing a sound check, she talked about 4, 7, 8. So that's 4 breaths in, hold for 7, exhale for 8. 16 seconds is slightly different. Pema Chodron, American Buddhist nun, esteemed author, amazing teacher, talks about taking 3 conscious breaths. So you can find any breath technique out there that resonates with you. Let's try this one. And I'm going to ask you to observe your breath. And if you've never heard observe your breath, what that means is really having a look at the qualities, noticing what you notice. So is your breathing shallow or deep? Is it slow or fast? Are you having sort of cold air come in through your nostrils and warm air going out? You know, notice what you notice. And so let's do this. Let's breathe in together for 4 seconds. Hold the in breath for 4. And exhale for 4. And hold the out breath for 4. And let's do that one more time and continue to observe your breath. Breathe in. How does that feel? So I venture to guess that when you were observing your breath, that you weren't thinking about what you had to do next, where you were before this presentation, what things you forgot to do last night. You were probably right in the present moment, connecting. 16 seconds is a tool that you can use anywhere, anytime. And that's the key thing about mindfulness is you can be doing we could practice mindfulness all day long, every day. It's just that will take us quite a long time to get to that stage, because in this culture of productivity, we really do tend to value, reading something while we're eating. And so we don't really notice what we're eating. Yes, Harry, thank you. Deep breaths out are actually healthy as well and giving us more oxygen. So what I wanted to also say is when you're breathing in, it's best to breathe in through your nose if that's comfortable for you, because breathing through our nose engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which really calms us down as opposed to the fight or flight nervous system. And Roxy, yes, the entire process has a science behind it. The act of holding and exhaling changes chemical reactions to our brain, for sure. Couldn't have said it better. So let's talk a little bit about that. Perfect segue. And it really does evolve our brains. So John Kabat-Zinn talks about stabilizing and calibrating our instrument. So the metaphor he talks about in his book, Mindfulness for Beginners, if we can see that, is the having a telescope, wanting to look at the moon as you're on a waterbed. So if you have a telescope and you're trying to look at the moon and you're on a waterbed, you'll never get a clear picture of the moon. Well, that's our minds. If we're only ever thinking, planning, and worrying, then we really don't have a stable place from which to center ourselves. And the idea is, I mean, this is a lifelong practice, but all of those 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day that we have, where can we find a gap? And if we don't train our brains to do that, and we don't have practices around that, for example, before you start a meeting or before you walk in the door to a house full of your family, kids, pets, maybe you want to do the 16 seconds or the 3 conscious breaths or the 4 seconds in, 7 hold, 8 exhaling, just to be present and transition to what's happening next. So there's a Harvard study, 47% of the time, the average American adult is not paying attention. That is a lot. So key there is, let's think about training our brains. There are loads of health benefits and changes to our physiology. And I name a few there when we're talking about fight or flight response. Our platelets get sticky. So fight or flight today may not be, fight or flight today in our modern day version is stress, and stress can even be perceived stress. It doesn't have to be real stress in terms of, a car coming at you or a saber-toothed tiger. It can be perceived stress, and that's enough to get all of our systems our blood clotting and so on to go into this fight or flight mode. And fight or flight is actually the adrenaline, cortisol, and glucagon that comes into our system is actually the equivalent of eating 5 Snickers bars all at the same time, flooding your system. So in order to stop that, and we all have our emotional tell as to when we feel that stress coming on, use 16 seconds, use that pattern interrupt. And I want to talk a bit here also. Hang on, sorry, I'm moving things around on the speakers notes screen. So I can move the slides ahead. So around scientific here, I have time just for one of these, which is the University of Massachusetts Medical School, the 56 days, 16 meditators, 30 minutes a day. They had an MRI brain scan done before the 56 days and at the end of the 56 days. And what it showed was an increase in gray matter in the hippocampus, that area of our brain that's responsible for spatial orientation, memory, and learning, and a decrease in gray matter in our amygdala, that area of the brain responsible for fear, anxiety, and stress. So it really does work. And I'm not suggesting you go out and start meditating for 30 minutes a day, because if you haven't meditated for 30 minutes, oh my goodness, that can be very challenging. Start with 16 seconds and experiencing the power of being present. So I want to try one more thing before we go into Q&A, which is squeeze and release. So you can take any part of your body or all of your body, and I know it says breathe on the screen, but we're going to do something different. And breathing, by the way, is, breathing is used in so many different traditions because our breath is always with us. It's one of the easiest things to access for it, but you're always welcome to be using all kinds of other things, whether it's, mantras, sounds, even just sitting for a moment and listening to the sounds around you can calm you down and slow a bit the swirl outside of you and inside of you. So squeeze and release is, taking your hands, your arms, your shoulders, your facial muscles, and squeezing for a few seconds and then letting go. And this is a great anxiety buster, because when we are squeezing, we're gathering up any tension and tightness in us. And then by letting go and releasing, we are triggering our relaxation mechanism in our body. So again, there's a lot of science in here. And there's many things that I could continue to talk about, but in the interest of time, I'll close out here with some resources, which I understand we'll be able to make available. Books on the bottom and different techniques on the top row there, and a poem by Rumi, which I'm going to read quickly because it resonates. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if there are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Thank you.
Bravo, bravo, Leigh. That was amazing. Really, really wonderful. And you happen to have read one of my favorite poems of all time. So that was synchronicity. And I just think you've done an amazing job of combining the workplace and the self and our energies, and how we can remain sane and whole and complete in challenging times. So thank you for the amazing job that you did.
Great.
And
thank you, Judy.
Leigh and I just conspired, and very favorably so. She will be a speaker at our Leadership and Innovation Conference, which launches on March 4th. So she will be speaking about mindful leadership. That's the working title, right?
Yes.
She's gonna meditate on it and see if it's the right one. But that'll be the gist of it. And we're thrilled to have you as one of our speakers. And I'm sure we'll be doing many more things together. So thank you. And I'd like to just know if we have a few questions for Leigh right now. Does anybody have a question? You can either use the chat. Roxy, do you want to take this on?
Well, I also know that Hillary said here, we implemented a 3-minute headspace meditation at the beginning of a weekly project team meeting. And during a launch phase, the team appreciated and changed the tone of our meetings. That, yes, that changes the trajectory. And Harry talks about nutrition, which I completely agree with. Sylvie, you have a question?
Hello, Leigh. Yes, I do. I'm Judy. I'm particularly happy to be here tonight for because of the topic of mindfulness. And my question was, how did you introduce mindfulness in the corporate world, and how was it received by the people you work with?
So Sylvie, it's so interesting in terms of it's varied. The experience is varied, although I would also say that in the last year, when people have been very much looking for different ways to cope in such uncertain times. In fact, times are always uncertain, but COVID and being in lockdown has really highlighted that. There is more openness, if you like, and inquiry around what can actually be done in you know, with ourselves, and then also as teams and organizations. A couple of things. Bill and Melinda Gates organization has a standing every Tuesday meditation for anybody and everybody there to drop in. So I think it really depends on sort of the leadership in terms of, is that on the agenda? But it also is, you know, it can be done in I don't want to say underground, but for example, at Microsoft, I went back and led meditations for several weeks with my former work group, and it was unofficial and unpaid, but people were curious. So I think it's sometimes it's very important the language one uses too. So, you know, anything to do with mindfulness and meditation can sometimes be viewed as, well, that's really far out, and maybe that's Buddhist or something else, and there can be some hesitation around that. But from a secular standpoint, and trying to really make the language as simple as possible, and then also not tied or specifically tied with science, it becomes a little bit more digestible and accessible, I think, by different audiences.
Thank you.
Great, and thank you, Bob and Suzanne and Kirsten, for those comments. I so appreciate your support and love. And Dawn, you said really drew the connection to gratitude. Wonderful, because you guys are the experts here about gratitude. So thank you for that. And Ellen Langer's research, no, I am not familiar with her. So I shall look into that.
Okay, and Leigh, how can people reach you if they want to follow up with a question for you?
Absolutely. Please, I am on LinkedIn. and the LinkedIn connection was sent in the announcement of the CGL webinar. I'm also on Instagram as Leigh Stevens, Leigh_Stevens 2018. So those are places you can find me, and you know where to find Judy. So and Judy
I'll
definitely
connect
knows
you.
where to find me.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's for sure. Okay, well, thank you. This was just amazing. And I'm feeling very good about the new format, the new structure. And we are going to officially close out on this webinar. And those who want to stay and discuss the changes afterwards will be welcome to do so. Please do ask people you know to join the Center for Grateful Leadership. And it's just gratefulleadership.com, www.gratefulleadership.com. It's free. And people say the experience is priceless. So that's a good combination. And we love to have new members contribute. I know we're working with one of our veterans to the CGL and veterans to the military, Tom Osa. He's working on putting together a column on the videos that support grateful leadership and the power of acknowledgement. So we should be launching that one quite soon. Okay, any questions in general as we close out the, I do want to say one more thing, which is our next session, our next webinar will be on March 11th. I know that seems light years away, but in this new format, I think it's going to work out very favorably. And our guest presenter is Samantha Elliott, she's got the greatest title in the world, Recognition and Appreciation Programs Lead at BASF, the huge chemical company, the international chemical company. And she's going to be talking, if you look at her LinkedIn profile, it says, creating a culture where all employees are seen, heard, and valued for who they are and the great work they do. Now that could not sum it up better in any way. We have to just figure out how to shrink the title a little bit, or Roxy will kill us. So, but anyway, she's a wonderful participant. She wanted to be here today, but unfortunately couldn't be. But those of you who are here, thank you to each and every one of you. You can feel free to share the webinar with all of your colleagues, friends, associates up on LinkedIn. You can tag us and put on hashtag 365 days of acknowledgements, because I'd love to hear what you're doing with that. And we'll see you in March. And we're going to be sharing content on the website. Harry's great suggestion was, when we would normally be having the in-between webinar, we were going to send out an email with new content. So just to keep you updated and know that we're alive and well. So any questions for me right now before we officially close?
I don't have any questions. I do want to say that I appreciate everybody's patience with this new platform and these new changes. And we will make the recording available on YouTube within 24 hours. And all of the articles and member contributions that you have seen, including the presentation, will be available on our website within the next couple of days. And then, of course, we will send out the recap next week for with links to all of the content.
Just one last thing I'd like to say to all of you before you start departing, is that if anyone would like to have me personally approach someone in your organization about this behavioral change model and how it might fit into your culture, just connect me with that person. And if it's learning and development or some other area, I am happy to come in virtually for now and do a presentation and discuss what this is about. Because if you wanted to be part of your culture, I'm your zealous missionary for it. And I would be very thrilled to approach anyone for that purpose. So, okay. Well, we're going to say goodbye for now. See you all hopefully in March, and others as well that you tell about us. And don't forget, please don't forget to acknowledge someone or many someones each and every day. Take care.